Welcome to Quarantine Conversation. Don't know what episode this is. I've literally lost count. I've done so many, but
I know.
it's been really fun to do these because I get to see staff and people I don't always get to see and I haven't seen in a long time. And this is such an exciting one for me because this man is harder to nail down than, I don't know. He knows a lot more about nails than I do, but this is a difficult guy to nail down. I'm so excited to get him on here. Kirk, hello. Welcome to Quarantine Conversations. It is so wonderful to see you.
Hey there, Pastor Hunter.
I like your hair. It's nice and long.
Yes, I intended to get a haircut before this all started, and I thought, oh, I can do it next week. That
Oh,
was a big mistake.
I think that's so funny. And people keep bringing that up. Like, oh, if you knew it was the last time you were going to do blank, well, how would you have done it differently? And I was like, if I knew it was the last time I was going to leave the house, I would have gotten a haircut. I would have gotten my dang haircut. Now I just look crazy. But I'm glad to see that you're owning it. When's the next haircut you think gonna happen for you? Would you ever shave your head? Would you ever just bick it all off?
I've been threatening to do a bowl cut, but I've had my hair long before, like
Hmm.
working in construction. Some of the construction guys occasionally grow their hair long and do ponytails. So I don't know. It's getting long enough. I could almost
Yeah, I'm kind of the same
do
way
that.
too. Like I could do the interview like this. When I do my hair like this, Megan, my wife, freaks out. She hates it so much. I wear a hat for my own sanity and for our marriage.
Yeah.
Um,
I keep asking my wife if she wants to give me a hand with it, but I think she's nervous to like take on that responsibility. So
I know, I know. I'm sure that you've had many like friends trying to cut other friends' hair disasters. Like I had a friend when I was this like 10 years ago. We were shaving each other's heads, and a girl was like, "Oh, hey, can I try shaving his head?" And she went to do it, and the guard fell off, and she didn't
oh
realize that she
no.
just zeroed all the way back up his head. It was like one of the most disastrous haircuts. It was pretty hysterical though. So I don't trust amateur hair cutting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, it seems like if you're in a big family, like usually I lived with a family that had 8 kids
Oh my gosh.
a long time ago, and
Yeah,
one of their kids was really good at cutting hair. So she became like the family hairstylist.
that's
And like,
awesome.
when you have that many people in the house, like you're always looking for ways to save funds. And that was one of the things that they did.
And it's also like bonding and trust building. Like you can get so many other like social benefits from having your siblings cut your hair. It's a great thing. Should
Yeah, she
start
was really good at it too. Like you would never have known like they were doing home hairstyling. So
home hairstyling. The
yes.
quarantine, that's the quarantine thing. So Kirk, you mentioned that you work in construction. I'm really interested. What is that like these days working in construction?
Well, so at first it was really strange because like the freeways for the first time ever were like presidential empty. Like you were going to work and there were only like a dozen cars on the 405 like around
Jeez.
you. And like you're talking when it would normally be rush hour and you'd be sitting there and stop and go and like you're flying down the freeway.
Hmm.
That's something I never thought I would see. I never thought I'd drive through Santa Monica during rush hour at 65 miles an hour.
That is awesome.
So, it felt like zombie apocalypse or some kind of like strange reality you just don't expect you'll ever see. And yet there it is.
Crazy. So nuts. What about like on the sites these days, like on job sites? Are people like trying to get you to be more like wearing masks and like how does that affect your work? I'm very interested in this.
Well, so interestingly enough, like right before this happened, um, I missed what I'm now calling the Last Supper because it was a small group off campus where we met up and they went to Ruby's and like they had,
Mm.
I got this picture of everybody like just having a great time having hamburgers and shakes, and I just wanted to be there so badly, and I was homesick with this really gnarly flu. And I went in and got tested and they said it was flu A, which I guess includes like SARS and is supposed to be like the nastier of the flus compared to flu B. And I got it at work, right? Like I went to work, my boss had it, I picked up some of the same tools he was using, and like both myself and my other helper, my coworker, we both got it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I was flat on my back for like four days, like at home, just really, really sick. So that's kind of how this thing started off. I was really sad to be homesick and miss like what apparently was the last time that we could all go out and eat together. but but I recovered, and coming off of that, all of a sudden all the restrictions started hitting. And I thought for sure when it first came out that they were going to say, yeah, construction workers should stay home.
Mm-hmm.
And then they called us essential workers. And I
Mm.
sort of get that for the case of people that are like moved out of their house and they're trying to finish a home and move back in.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
that's kind of a big deal. But it surprised me. So, I mean, we started wearing masks at work, and like the contractors started trying to like have fewer people at the job sites.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I guess what I saw is I saw people that, like, we were working at a home up in Malibu at the time.
Yeah.
And it seems like some of the people that have properties that are sort of away from the big city, there was a big rush to kind of get out of town and just
Mm.
be somewhere where it's not so crowded. So it seems like everybody just sort of headed out as far away from the city as they can and hunkered down.
Yeah, for real. So did you, like, as you're working in sorry, they're doing trash out there. As you were in Malibu, like, did you notice like a ton of people coming in, and like, if you're like sitting there for lunch or you're trying to go get something at a store, like, was it more crowded than normally, or more crowded than what you'd expect, or
So
what was it
the
like?
first thing that shocked me is like suddenly every public restroom everywhere is closed. So it's like all of a sudden finding a bathroom is a big deal. I literally was stopping to get gas on my way home a couple of times, and I saw a mom with a small child come in, like, bathroom emergency, please, my
Oh
kid
yeah,
has to
yeah,
go
yeah,
to the
yeah.
bathroom, please, 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 help, help, help. And like literally stone cold, sorry, ma'am, we can't help you. Everything's closed. And like I felt so bad for those moms,
Yeah.
because it's like, you're in the middle of nowhere. Like, where are you going to find a bathroom that's open if
Right.
every restaurant like closed and only open for takeout? So, you have to go at home and you have to go at the job site. And like the irony is, like, during COVID, construction workers still have porta potties with no sink and no soap.
Right. I was gonna ask about that too. That's crazy.
So
So
it's
they
like,
don't seem to really care all that much.
yeah, we started just carrying like a bar of soap and washing our hands like at the hose outside of the
Yeah.
house. Because like
Yeah.
the jobs where you're inside the house, usually there's not a working bathroom yet if they're still working on the house. The jobs that do have a working bathroom, if the clients are there and you're working outside, then they'd rather you stayed outside working and they stayed in their house so they don't have to worry about getting sick from you.
Crazy. So
Yeah.
wow, such a shock, such a change. I want to switch gears a little bit. I was really interested in hearing about your construction job, but a lot of us know that you're a very spiritual, very theologically minded person. And we were texting a couple weeks ago about setting up a time to do this, and you said you've been busy because you've been preaching so much. So
Yes.
I would love for you to let us all know what you mean by that and how that has been for you.
Well, okay. So, I mean, for those that don't know my story, like, I've been separated from my wife for the last year. Like, when
Hmm.
I first sort of came in and started working with the youth group, like, we talked about this, and like I've been going to counseling with my wife and working on just kind of trying to restore our friendship and restore our marriage and kind of get things back to square one.
Yeah.
But like during that time, I sort of went through a housing crisis. I needed to find a place to live, and like it's not expensive to find a place for just one person in LA on your own that's super affordable, especially if
Right.
you still have like your family to take care of. And so it ended up that like one of my friends in my small group that I go to with the church opened up their place for me to rent a room from them. And like it was sort of like I went from basically staying at an Airbnb that had a room with 6 bunk beds in it that was
Wow.
like I'm sure it was illegal. Like the house probably had like 30 people in it. And I remember waking up the first night in the middle of the night because somebody from Europe put like a bag full of books in the oven, and someone else turned the oven on to preheat it to bake cookies, and the whole house filled up with smoke and the alarms went off. And like, it was just really hard to sleep in this house. There were just too many people there. And I was worried I was going to get fired from my job. And I asked my small group just to pray for me that I'd be able to find a place. And a couple in my small group let me stay at a house that was short-term, that was a rental property while they fixed it up. And then my roommate that I stay with now, Ray, like, he offered to let me rent a room from him. So I basically went from being like sort of almost homeless to living right by the church and just living right across the street from my small group leaders. And so these small group leaders, they're the Sneeds, Joe and Robin Sneed, and then my roommate is Ray Louth. And like, there's sort of this community of people that live on that street that go to our church, and that God's used in my life just to help me through like probably one of the toughest seasons I've been through.
Yeah.
And in some ways that season has been a huge blessing because like it got me to come back and work with the youth again. And it got me connected with a small group in a deep and meaningful way again. And so like, and it's given me the space and the time to kind of rebuild my friendship with my wife, you know, because when things get bad and you're just fighting all the time, like you lose that connection you have because there's too much conflict. And that peace and quiet has given us the space to kind of start to reconnect and to kind of essentially start dating again. So it's sort of weird to go back to the basics when you're in your 40s and kind of start all over again. But for me, like working with the youth group and being in my small group, it's almost been like going back and doing a do-over.
That's nice.
And so long story short, like my small group, like one of their gifts is sort of hospitality. They reach out a lot to the neighborhood. They invite all the neighbors all the time to events. And like, we were all so sad that we couldn't go to church. And they texted me one night and they said, hey, like, you know, what do you think about doing some worship songs, like, you know, out in our driveway? And I'm like, well, I'm not much of a singer. Like, if we can play songs off the internet, like, I'm up for it. But I don't think you want me to be your, like, worship leader. That's not my gift for sure. Even though I love to sing. Yeah, I love to sing, but I don't know if everyone else loves for me to sing. So they asked me and I said, well, I'll preach. Like, if we set this up, like, I'll be happy to preach a message. And like, I didn't know how many people would show up, but the way it worked out, two of our neighbors, they normally live in New York. And because New York had such a bad outbreak, they came back to Los Angeles, and, you know, they were home and they came out and listened on their front porch and through the windows of their house. And then the Sneeds came and the neighbors across the street came, and their niece did our worship for us, like did a speaker and played the songs. And then an older couple that goes to our church next door to them, the husband is a caretaker for his wife. He started coming. One of the guys walking through the neighborhood that lives on our street saw us having church and stopped and has been coming every week now for 8 weeks. And then up the street, like some of the people that we know from Hands and Mercy, Raul and his wife, like they have been coming every week as well as my roommate. So it's like we all have just been pulling our chairs out and sitting in front of our houses, like keeping the distance requirements away from each other, staying just as family groups, wearing masks, except, you know, when I'm preaching. And for 8 weeks, like, yeah. Well, I have to kind of talk loud because we're outside, so I'm trying to get everybody. I'm competing with the peacocks. We've got dog walkers coming through. We got cars driving through. But for 8 weeks, like, we've had church out there.
That's so rad.
And like, here's something that's kind of crazy. Like, one week, this giant swarm of bees came and settled in this tree outside of the house, like right where everybody's meeting. And like, we thought we were going to have to cancel because there were literally like thousands of bees swarming the tree. And I thought, surely this is just like, I thought it was the kind of weird thing that would happen to try to stop something cool, right? So,
Yeah.
but our neighbors that came from New York, like, they have a friend, and that friend had sent them a little card with like a picture of a bee inside of it. And this person had been just going through a hard time, and they were wanting to reach out and just be a good friend to her. And so they looked up the meaning of like, what do bees mean? And like, they looked it up on Google, and apparently the answer they found was that bees represent hope. I guess maybe it's related to springtime and
Yeah, that makes sense.
and resurrection that we see with everything coming back to life in the spring and Easter. So, but I never knew that about bees, and like, I thought it was interesting that something I thought would be a big turnoff and it chased them into their house was actually almost like a sign,
Yeah,
like something that was encouraging and hopeful to them. But
that's
it's
awesome.
been strange to me, like our little community church of just like maybe a half dozen families and, maybe 12 to 15 people. Like, one of the families lost a grandparent and slash parent to COVID in the nursing home. And
Wow.
I guess that was difficult because, I mean, she already was sick, so,
Yeah,
they knew that there was a possibility, but they had to say goodbye sooner than they expected. And,
that's sad.
that you're not able to have services in person right now. So, but if you had asked me when this started, if it would touch our little group personally like that, I wouldn't have thought that it would happen. And I mean, I don't know, this time to me, it reminds me of the stories I've heard from my grandparents from Norway coming to America after World War II. Like, it was the same kind of crazy situation where it's just, you don't know what to expect.
Right.
And, my grandfather, who's now with the Lord and lived to be 105, told me he was the only man from his village in southern Norway that was there to see the King of Norway return after World War II.
Wow.
And like, at his funeral services, the pastor that gave the services, he told him like that Bestefar knew who, Bestefar means grandfather in Norwegian.
Oh,
Bestefar
cool.
knew who his king was, and he was waiting for the return of the king.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that was one of the highlights of his life. But there weren't jobs like after the king came back, even though the country was recovering. And so that was why my dad and my grandfather came to America. And they were one of
Makes
the
sense.
last people to come through Ellis Island on a boat and see
Wow.
the Statue of Liberty and like come into the country that way. And my dad told me, I told him one time, because I was working in all these super nice houses and I was just starting to feel like kind of like I wasn't doing that well. And he's like, when we first came to this country, like all we had is 2 coffee cans, a big one for like boiling water and then a little one that we cooked our food in. And he's like, but we had our family and we had each other and we had our faith. And he said, that was all we needed. We never once felt poor. And, just having my dad tell me that story, like it really touched my heart. And I think for me, COVID has sort of reminded me to appreciate what really matters. Like, I do miss like getting together with everyone, and I miss being at church in person, but it's like I value that I still have my relationship with the Lord, and I still have my friends and family, and I still have my health and the opportunity to live another day for the Lord. And it's like, it's sort of like a faith walk. We just all know that we're here for however long God wants us to be here, and just to have the chance to like keep going with the Lord and keep reaching out to the people around us is what really matters.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, so much good stuff that you just said, but I love the idea of like this community church thing. Like I listened to this podcast where he talks about the church during COVID is like Acts rebooted, where it's like we're having to figure out how to do church and fellowship and how to get people involved and excited about God. in a brand new way. And it sounds like you guys are really rebooting Acts too. You know, you think of the famous passage kind of the first church where they're sharing everything. No one had anything that they needed, and they're breaking bread and they're singing hymns and they're preaching and doing things daily. And it sounds like that's what you guys are doing. And so, man, I'm just wondering where my invite has been. I mean, I have a car. My wife and I would love to join, but that we could talk offline. But Kirk,
You're totally welcome to like come and visit, but we've kind of intentionally been keeping it small because we don't want to like be in violation of the authority. Right. And
yeah,
you know,
that's a kind way for you to say don't come.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
I don't want to be one of those people that makes the news and makes Christians look bad because I'm not like, you know, I want to respect the authorities, and totally. I know that the leadership of our church feels the same way.
Absolutely, yeah.
In fact, this is a sidebar, but I thought it was interesting. Like my family now live in West Des Moines, Iowa. Okay. And their church is also a fairly large church, like Rolling Hills Covenant. And like their governor recently opened the state back up and said, yeah, we can have like large group gatherings again. And like the pastors of the church, like literally looked at the situation in the state and what's happening elsewhere and just said, you know what, we don't think it's quite time yet because we still see a lot of concern and we don't want to go on record as like being a source of problems in our community. We want to be part of the solution. So I mean, I still pray for our leaders every day that they'll have wisdom on when to open things and when, so that they can keep the people safe. But I really respected their wisdom in that, and I respect our church for the same reasons.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Kirk, I'm going to end this one by the same way we end everyone. I'm very excited about your answer. One thing that you're doing in quarantine, reading, watching, listening to, that you want everybody to enjoy.
I mean, I guess I would just encourage everyone to be taking their personal prayer requests to God every day and just talk to him and tell God like exactly how they're feeling and what they're happy about and what they're sad about, and just keep the dialogue open with God, because I think God's kind of reaching out for us. And like the thing I've been pondering, it seems like every week when we have our live stream, you mentioned something about asking a question about how has God been working through COVID in your life. And I think he's always reaching out for all of us. And I just want to encourage everybody to reach back, because I'll have to look it up and text the verse, but somewhere there's a verse that talks about like seeking God while he's near. And like he's always not far from any one of us, but it's like this is a good time to reach out.
Indeed. Great time, as we can see with your home church and with everything on Impact. You know, we get people every week. We haven't really lost numbers yet, so people are still reaching. That's good news. And it's good news that we get to talk, Kirk. So thankful that you carved some time out of your day. Hope you're doing well. I hope you stay safe, and I hope we see each other again in person soon, my friend.
I hope so too. We're all praying for that.
We're all praying for that. All right, Kirk, have a good one, man. Talk to you later.
You too, Hunter. Have a good day.
Bye.